There are 8 children that are deceased. I can't be strong for you. This is real, and this is the result when someone snaps. So I'm gonna ask the community.
The last thing Shamar Elkins posted on Facebook before he went and killed his children was a photo of himself and his oldest daughter sitting at a restaurant, both of them eating burgers. He had taken her out on what he called a one-on-one date. The caption was full of laughing emojis. That post went up the night before the murders. Less than a few hours later, 8 children were dead, including 7 of his own, all of them shot before sunrise in Shreveport, Louisiana. And that gap between the smiling restaurant photo and what happened in that house is exactly what makes this story so hard to wrap your head around. Because this man was not some stranger off the street. He was their father. Before we get into that Sunday morning, you need to understand who Shamar Elkins actually was. Because on the surface, nothing about him looked like someone capable of what he did. He was 31 years old, born and raised in Shreveport. He had served 7 years in the Louisiana Army National Guard between 2013 and 2020, and after leaving the military, he was working a regular job at UPS doing deliveries. A coworker who knew him described him as someone who came across as a typical devoted father, the kind of man who talked about his kids the way people do when family is genuinely the thing they live for. His Facebook page backed that picture up. Weeks before the shooting, he had posted a photo with all 7 of his children at church on Easter Sunday, captioned, "Happy Easter, had a wonderful time at church for the first time with all my kids, what a blessed day." Then, 2 weeks before Easter, he had shared a prayer post asking God to help him guard his mind against depression, anger, and anxiety. That second post is the one that tells you something was already wrong under the surface, because people who are doing fine do not generally repost prayers about needing strength to fight depression. He was struggling, and he was trying, at least publicly, to hold it together. But behind the church photos and the Easter captions, his personal life was coming apart in ways that he clearly could not handle. He and his wife had been separating, and she wanted a divorce. That on its own is hard for anyone, but for Elkins, who also had 3 children with a second woman living nearby on Harrison Street, the whole structure of his life was under enormous pressure from multiple directions at the same time. A family member confirmed the couple had been arguing about the separation in the period leading up to the shooting, and that a court date connected to the divorce had been set for the very next day, Monday, April 20th. So picture where his head was at. His marriage was ending, a court date was hours away, and his stepfather, Marcus Jackson, later said that on an Easter Sunday phone call, Elkins had been crying and talking about dark thoughts, saying he was drowning and that he had been thinking about ending his own life. Jackson had tried to encourage him, telling him he could get through it, but what Elkins said back to him is the kind of thing that stays with a person. He told his stepfather, "Some people don't come back from their demons." 2 weeks after that phone call, he took his oldest daughter out to eat a burger and posted about it online with laughing emojis, and a few hours after that, he picked up a gun. Now, what specifically pushed him over the line on that particular night into that particular morning? The full answer to that is something investigators were still piecing together in the days after the shooting. But Shreveport Police and the Caddo Parish District Attorney's Office both classified the entire event as a domestic violence incident, which tells you the trigger was relational, rooted in what was happening between him and the women in his life. Something broke, and the people who paid for it were the ones who had done nothing wrong. There is also another layer to Elkins that matters here, one that his public image completely hid. He had a criminal history that should have followed him in ways it clearly did not. Back in 2019, he was arrested after firing 5 rounds of a 9mm handgun near Caddo Middle Magnet School in Shreveport at a point when children were outside on the playground. He claimed someone had shot at his house first and he was firing back. The charges were illegal use of a weapon and carrying a firearm within 1,000 feet of a school. He ended up pleading guilty to the weapons charge and getting 18 months of supervised probation, with the school firearm charge dropped as part of the deal. That conviction, under both federal and state law, should have made it illegal for him to ever own or carry a firearm again. Yet 7 years later, he walked into 2 houses with a gun. How he got that gun is one of the open questions that investigators were still working through after the shooting. Elkins had recently spent more than a week at a local Veterans Affairs hospital for a mental health evaluation before being released. His family knew about the stay, and his coworkers at UPS had also started noticing something was off in the weeks before the shooting. One coworker said Elkins had developed a visible habit of pulling out his own hair, which had created a noticeable bald spot on his head. That is not something you do when you're okay. That is what stress looks like when it has nowhere else to go. He was released from the VA. He went back home and took his daughter out to eat. And then, in the early hours of Sunday, April 19, 2026, he moved. Investigators believe Elkins went to the Harrison Street address first, where his girlfriend lived with her 3 children. He shot her, took her children, and left. Then he drove to the 300 block of West 79th Street, where his wife, Shaniqua, and their children were living. That house had 9 people inside it when he arrived, and by the time he was done, most of them were dead. Police would later say that Elkins shot most of the children in the head and that many of them probably were still asleep when it happened. They used the word execution, meaning he walked through that house with a purpose. The children who were still in their beds never even had a chance to run. But some of them did try to run, and one of them made it out.
There was also an additional female and an additional 13-year-old juvenile that fled from this house and actually jumped off the roof. They both had injuries sustained from fleeing from the incident, but they are both expected to recover.
While Elkins was still inside that house, a 13-year-old and an adult woman managed to get out through the roof. The 13-year-old jumped from the rooftop and broke bones in the fall, but survived. The 8 who couldn't get out are not. A neighbor 2 houses down later said her security camera had picked up footage of Elkins running away from the home toward a nearby tire shop right after the shots were fired, which means he left quickly and deliberately, like a man who had somewhere else to be.
And then one of the children escaped by jumping off the roof. I think broke her leg in the process. So we really don't know. He then hijacked a vehicle and took off, but the police gave chase. Then he fired on the police, and then he ended up being deceased.
We're learning more about the man who shot and killed 8 children and injured 2 adults before being killed this morning by police in Shreveport, Louisiana. Those police say that the gunman was 31-year-old Shamar Elkins, and that the 7 of the children that were slain were his. In interviews, Elkins' family members said that he had some mental health problems and had recently expressed suicidal thoughts. Police say that Elkins killed the children execution style. One of the 2 women shot was his wife. She's hospitalized tonight with life-threatening injuries. The mass shooting, of course, has left that community just heartbroken.
There are 8 children that are deceased. I can't be strong for you. I think about the mother and what this family has lost. I think about this community and what this community has lost. And I don't have the words to give you, and I'm sorry.
And Governor Gavin Newsom's office is blasting both the NRA and gun violence, posting, "This is an unspeakable tragedy," and adding, "Repeated horrors like this don't happen anywhere else but this country. This," he said, "was a total moral failure."
The scene that officers found when they cleared that West 79th Street home at 6:43 in the morning was, by every account from the people who were there, unlike anything they had dealt with before. Bullet holes were visible in the doors of the house. Blood and evidence markers were spread throughout the home and into the backyard. Neighbors who came outside after hearing the sirens described what they saw from the street. One child had been found on the roof, which tells you that even in the middle of what was happening inside that home, at least one child had tried to get out the same way the others had and had not made it in time. At around 6:15 that morning, Elkins carjacked a red Kia Sportage near the intersection of West 79th Street and Linwood Avenue and took off heading south. Shreveport police, who were already responding to what they were finding at those two residential scenes, were now also dealing with an armed man and a stolen car, and there was information coming in that the 3 children from the Harrison Street home might be inside the vehicle with him. That made the entire chase more complicated. Traffic officers spotted the Kia heading southbound on Interstate 49 at 6:17 a.m., and the pursuit began. By 6:18, they were crossing the Red River Bridge out of Shreveport and into Bossier City. The chase ran for several more minutes before Elkins stopped or wrecked the vehicle and got out on foot in the 400 block of Brompton Lane.
29 a.m., officers made contact with the suspect through an exchange of gunfire. At 6:30 a.m., officers confirmed contact with the suspect in the 400 block of Brompton Lane.
3 Shreveport officers discharged their firearms and Elkins was shot dead on the spit. At 6:40 a.m., officers confirmed that the vehicle was empty and no children were found inside. The 3 children from Harrison Street were safe in a separate location. At 7:03 a.m., about 1 hour and 8 minutes after the first call came in from that rooftop, Shamar Elkins was pronounced dead on the scene on Brompton Lane and Bossier City. The Louisiana State Police were brought in at 7:14 to handle the investigation into the officer-involved shooting, which is standard when police kill someone during a confrontation. Meanwhile, back at West 79th Street, officers were clearing the home and making the kind of discoveries that would follow them for the rest of their career. At 6:55 a.m., multiple deceased children were confirmed inside the residence, and the youngest was 3 years old. The investigation that followed was about documentation and evidence, not prosecution, because the man at the center of it was already gone. What the coroner's office confirmed in the hours after the shooting were 8 names, 5 girls and 3 boys, ages 3 through 11. Jayla Elkins, 3 years old, Shayla Elkins, 5, Kayla Pugh, 6, Layla Pugh, 7, Marcaden Pugh, 10, Soraya Snow, 11, Kadarian Snow, 6, Braylon Snow, 5. 7 of them were Shamar Elkins' own biological children. The 8th from the Snow family was a cousin.
All I can tell you today is my heart is saddened. It has brought me to my knees, and of course that's a great place to be, because then we can communicate with God.
The officials who faced cameras after this did not have polished responses ready, and the things they said in those press conferences pointed to a broader problem that was sitting underneath this individual tragedy, one that the people of Shreveport had been living with long before Shamar Elkins made it impossible to ignore.
Over 30% of our crimes and 30% of our murders in the city of Shreveport are domestic in relation. Now that number has gone up. We've more than doubled our homicides in the city of Shreveport because of one act of domestic violence.
30% of all murders in Shreveport come from domestic violence situations, and in one single morning, one man pushed that city's homicide number past double what it had been the day before. The debate that followed nationally went where it always goes. Governor Gavin Newsom's office put out a statement calling it an unspeakable tragedy and framing it around gun violence, saying that events like this simply do not happen anywhere else in the world but America, and calling it a total moral failure. People on different sides of the gun debate picked up those words and started swinging them at each other as they always do. And underneath all of that noise, the families of 8 children were trying to figure out how to plan funerals for kids who had just been eating Easter dinner 2 weekends ago. The gun that Elkins used that morning is also its own story. His 2019 conviction for illegally using a weapon near a school should have legally prohibited him from owning or possessing any firearm under both federal and state law. Yet investigators found an assault-style pistol at the scene, and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Investigations began actively tracing how he got hold of one, because someone with a felony-level weapons conviction should not have been able to legally walk into a store and buy one.
Firearm. Second was, is there any domestic violence history that happened here in the past that the Shreveport Police Department could have maybe identified a little bit sooner that could have possibly caused this incident from happening? You know, they have 450 sworn members within the police department. They do have a domestic violence unit. Were there any domestic violence visits during the last couple of years? And mental illness is going to be a big part of this investigation. Was he suffering from long-term mental illness, or was the unfortunate incidents that were going along with him and his wife cause him to snap and commit this horrible, tragic incident?
And it also highlights a disturbing fact in America where guns in the household are more likely to be used on family members than on an intruder or a stranger. What kind of wake-up call should this be? And I'm wondering if mass shootings against family members is common at all, especially when it comes to people's own children.
Yeah, so you take a look at a couple states, New York, California, they have these red flag laws that allow law enforcement agencies to retrieve firearms from individuals that are gun owners that may be going through a certain situation or may be involved in some type of incident that allows the law enforcement agency to retrieve those guns before an incident like this occurs going in the future. So there are things that could be done. It's going to take some federal oversight to take a closer look at what can we do to make sure that these firearms are not getting in the wrong people's hands, especially maybe through mental crisis.
Yeah. Rodney, thank you so much. Appreciate you joining us on this horrific story today.
How he got that gun is a question that outlasts everything else about this case, and it is one that still does not have a public answer. But here's what stays with you when you sit with this story long enough. This was not a man who came across as dangerous to the people who knew him day to day. He was someone who showed up to church with his kids and posted about it. Someone who took his daughter out for a burger and made it feel like a wholesome daddy-daughter moment for the internet. Someone whose coworkers would have called him a devoted father if you had asked them the week before. And on the inside, he was someone who had told his stepfather that some people don't come back from their demons, and who had been pulling his own hair out from stress, and who had just gotten out of a mental health facility and was still falling apart.
Is this: domestic violence is not a private issue. It's not a family issue. It is a community issue. And when we fail to respond in a coordinated, consistent, and compassionate way, people die.
Good morning. On this morning, Satanya Smiles and I, who's an advocate in the Cedar Grove area, had the opportunity to go and speak with some of the family members of the victims that we lost on yesterday. And the family wanted us to express to you all to allow them to grieve and to go through this process, because this is not a process that is easy for them by any means. They want you to allow the Shreveport Police Department to do their job in this investigation. I also wanted you to know to continue to pray for their families, but also wanted you to understand that 7 of those children belong to Mr. Elkins, who took their lives, and 1 did not. And they wanted to ensure that you all had correct and precise information. This is a difficult process. And at this point, what they are trying to do is to wrap their mind around what has occurred in their family. How do they navigate through this? So if it's anything that you can do for them right now, is to keep them the priority. I'm gonna say it again, keep them the priority and respect their wishes. Respect their wishes as their loved ones go through surgery and they're healing and they're in a dark place, because they don't know how to wrap their minds around all of this. Leave the social media chatter alone, thinking that you know everything when you do not. The best thing that you can do for them is to allow them to navigate again through this devastating, traumatic process. And from that point, as we respect their wishes, as they plan for the burial of the children and the grandchildren, I want you to think about the mothers that are the survivors, because there are 3 mothers at this point. One is in surgery at this time, that are going to be faced with immense pain, that's going to need all of us, the community long-term counseling, the father that is left here to grieve their child. And I want you to remember that more than anything, because it's people first. It's not your stories, it's not who posted first, it's them. It's all about them. And that as a community, as a nation in this country, and for all of the accolades that we have received here, the prayers of support from Canada, from Belgium, that I want you to understand that domestic violence is nobody's joke. It is real, and these are the residual effects of what happens if we're not paying attention. And it is a concerted, collaborative effort for us all to make. And you have to be intentional about that, because we are faced with a devastating tragedy in this city at this point in time. And we don't have all of the answers, but you can rest assured that the work that we started will continue. And we will fight this on behalf of this family. But right now, I am asking all of you to keep them lifted, and pray for them like you've never prayed before. This is what I'm asking of you from them. And as a community, as a city, as a state, as a nation, I know that we can do it. We've done it before, and we'll do it again.
And in Shreveport on the morning of April 19th, 8 of the people who died were children who had done nothing except be born to the wrong father at the wrong time in his life. His wife, Shayna Quia, survived, shot in the face, having lost 4 of her children in a single morning, and now facing a life that looks nothing like the one she had the night before. The woman on Harrison Street survived too, having been shot and left behind while Elkins drove away with her children, who were eventually found safe. The 13-year-old who jumped off a roof survived, and those survivors now carry the weight of something that most people will never come close to experiencing.
We stand in difficult times. One of the things that I think is most important is that if you are experiencing abuse and violence in your home, seek the resources. Don't stay where you are. Seek the resources to escape. The biggest lesson that we have is that we must protect those who cannot protect themselves. There are resources available. Take advantage of those resources. We mourn for these children. We mourn for the women who are recovering, we hope. We pray for their recovery and healing. And we ask that the community draw together to give support to these families and these victims.
We're standing in this place again. There are 8 children that are deceased. I can't be strong for you. I think about the mother and what this family has lost. I think about this community and what this community has lost. And I don't have the words to give you, and I'm sorry. I don't know what people think in the crevices of their mind to want to harm another human being, let alone that of children who have their whole life ahead of them. From what I've learned about this incident is that it's domestic in nature that makes it even more horrific for all the fighting that we do as it relates to this. And maybe you can stand strong with this, but I can't without shedding tears of traumatic pain. I pain and I grieve for this family. I grieve for the lives that are lost, and I'm asking you to please utilize every resource that the sheriff has brought forth now when you know that these situations occur. We cannot be and make this a joke. This is not a freaking joke. This is real, and this is the result when someone snaps. So I'm gonna ask the community, along with prayer, with every mental health consultant, counselor that is out here, this family and this community needs you. I need you. Because how do we get through this? How do we get to the next level? It is real and this is raw. And these are the tragedies when there are domestic violence or domestic disturbances in our community.
What do you think could have pushed Elkins over the edge? Let me know in the comments section. Click on one of the cards on your screen to see more videos like this. See you in the next one.